So there has been a leaked Labour report. So if you don't or may not know, Gordon Brown was given the task a couple of months back now by Keir Starmer. Go and look at a constitutional review of the UK system. How could we make it better? What changes could we make? And more importantly, what would be good for us to put forward at a next general election? Now, I love that because it is the type of thinking that Labour really needs to be putting forward to show that it can bring a proper change to, the UK, because it desperately needs it. And there's one thing in particular, and I hope a lot of PR campaigners will see the value of jumping on it, because there's two things I've already said that would massively change UK politics. The first one, obviously, we start electing, MPs by PR. Again, massive change politically, and would certainly change the landscape overnight. So certainly one, again, I would want. The other one we've talked about, of course, House of Lords, abolishing it and replacing it with a regional representative body. So you'd split all the UK up into sort of different regions, have them voted by, PR, and then they would sort of take up the rules and the role of the House of Lords. Now, this would also dramatically change the UK as well, because as we see at the moment, where you've got the Conservatives with a massive majority that they can just force everything through that they want, when you've got the House of Lords, which has been the one thing where sensible debate and has stopped them on a couple of occasions, and all they've done in response to this is just put more lords in. I mean, it's insane that we've got more bureaucracy focused in one location in the House of Lords than currently in I think it's the House of the People's Representative in China. And the only reason that is so big is because of how China was sort of structured in its government. So it's definitely something that does really need to be addressed. But that is not all that was in the leaked report. So we're going to go just quickly into a couple of other things that were covered, but I think very, very important going forward. And we'll see, obviously, what ends up being in the full report and what gets taken up by Labour. So I expect probably we're going to see this at the Labour conference at some point. So Brown may give a speech. I generally don't know how it was sort of intended to be released, but obviously it was not intended to be leaked. However, again, may have been some sinister, maybe maybe it might have just been innocently leaked. Who knows? But as always, before we do go getting into sort of the more small details on that, please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So, as always, let's go cracking on into it. So, what else came from this report? Well, first of all, is the biggie, the House of Lords. You abolish the House of Lords and you replace it with local regions and devolved nations. So, that would be good. I think that is really, really good. But he also wants to devolve economic powers, including taxation and creating new independent councils for the nations of England. So a couple of the big things are, so new tax powers for some devolved governments, which could include stamp duty. That would be good. Because again, it gives these the more local devolved governments more power to say, how things, get run, what happens, what changes. I think that's fine. Having sort of devolved governments, it's perfectly fine. I don't have any problem with that. I think, as we've talked about before, localism, I think, should become a new buzzword in the Labour Party. And I do think we're going there. But it needs to sort of, I think, become more solidified, and rather than just become a buzzword when we're talking about localism. When we talk about localism, well, this is what it means, handing more power. And I think this is sort of the direction where they're going with it. So the next one is powers for local people to promote bills in Parliament via democratically elected bodies. That would be good. That would be very good to see where that bill and what types of bills would be promoted by these people and how that will be sort of elected, what these democratically elected bodies are. Again, like I say, this is just a leaked report, so we don't know the full details on that. But I would be very, very interested to see what those full details are. But I've got no problem with that. I think that's a pretty good idea, to be honest. Maybe you could, again, link it in with the House of Lords reform. And maybe that's where that sort of comes from. But again, I don't know. The next one is a constitutional guarantee of social and economic rights. Okay, that's fine, no problem there. And then this gets more interesting. So more powers for mayors on education, transport, and research funding. That would be very, very, very good. That would be very, very interesting to see how that gets developed more, because at the moment education is still very, very much centrally controlled by sort of the central government. And some, of course, devolved nations, like in Scotland, they have sort of more control over their education, as does Wales. So it'd be very interesting to see what powers exactly mayors would get on education. Again, transport would be fantastic. That makes sense. And research funding, are the mayors just going to get given a pot of money? Again, it's sort of all questions, and sort of when it's a leaked report, this is the type of questions you've got. But the other interesting one is this. I think this could have a really, really big impact. So one of the other recommendations is a crackdown on standards in central government and parliament. This would include a jury of ordinary citizens selected by ballot being able to rule on complaints against MPs and ministers via the new Integrity and Ethics Commission. So I think from what we've seen for the past couple of years with how Boris acted, and we've seen that, I think reforming the ethics committee and putting new rules in there and tightening it up, and I think having that a sort of an elected body of like judiciary citizens, maybe selected sort of something similar like with jury service, maybe. I kind of like that. I have to say, I really do kind of like that, because that would then lead to a more democratic say of what the local constituencies have to say about sort of their MP. We've seen in a couple of cases a lot of the recent scandals around MPs. The local constituencies have been a very, very, very annoyed at their MP, but haven't sort of had a recall election being done. And of course, there are obviously, again, rules and regulations, how that would be formed around. Like I say, this is just a leaked report, so we don't know the full thing, but I probably expect to see this maybe at the Labour conference at some point. Maybe Brown will give a speech about it. I don't know. But he's been talking a lot recently about sort of constitutional reform and how we can sort of reform the UK. And this seems very, very interesting. I'm very, very excited to see what the full report would be and what some of these rules would be. Again, sort of how that how those local bills get promoted. What is that electoral body? Is it linked into the House of Lords reform? Does it come from there? Again, more questions really than answers at this point. Like I say, it is a leaked report, but that's what happens sometimes. But it was something we will definitely keep an eye on. Again, when it's out in full, we'll maybe do a live stream on it, because I think it's definitely worth having a look at in depth. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.